Good morning, welcome to Walking Slowly Downhill, a series of collected thoughts and responses written during a walk down the River Murray in 2015 from source to mouth. This is what was written on the 66th day, White Sands towards Wellington. Today we move the caravan from Milang Caravan Park to Milang, Lakeside Park. Milang is a tiny town right on the shores on Lake Alexandrina. It used to be a thriving harbour, an obligatory stop for anyone wishing to travel from Melbourne to Adelaide, as Lake Alexandrina had to be crossed by steamer in order to get travellers from Meningie, located at the far east of the lake, to Milang, and then overland to Adelaide. Now it has one tiny store, one pub and one pier. But for 100 metres right along the shoreline, tiny houses crowd a tiny street. They're almost miniature houses, half the normal width, height and breadth, painted in blues, violets, pinks and greens. And they're mostly all abandoned, except for the very last one, surrounded by green lawn stretching to the lake, thriving poplars and joyful daisy patches. I keep looking around for tiny people hurrying along the gravel street to their tiny front door, but there's no one walking here but Steve and I. I don't begin the walk today until late. Towards the walk's end, I arrive in the tiny town of Jevois. I cross an intersection and the road sweeps to the right. An elderly man in an orange shirt is sitting on his front veranda reading something. I say hello, but he looks at me for a time and doesn't answer. There are only 3 or 4 houses in the town, and I wonder how he lives with his life, lives with his wife, who he's talking to. I move on to the open road. Dogs bark, rush up to the front fence, and stop only when I've moved off. Lives, many lives, lived in the most unthinkable ways, in such varied circumstances and locations. It's at times like these that change seems possible, that anything at all feels possible. Would a life in Milang be possible? Facing Lake Alexandrina each day, waking each morning to its vast beauty, to its changeable skies, to its watery light. The world is full of possibilities. There's only the road, I was thinking earlier today. There's only me and the road. That's all there is. I've said it before, but it is so. Only me and the road. '67th day, Wellington towards Milang. I'm thinking about that last line yesterday. That's all there is, me and the road. What do I mean by it? In part I mean this: long ago, perhaps back somewhere between Mabine and Ned's Corner, I stopped thinking that the road owes me something, that it should be built for a walker as well as for the vehicles that journey down it, that the jagged stones that line its sides do me no favour, that there should be regular access to water and shade. But since Renmark, I've increasingly accepted the conditions each day brings as the only ones arising, and therefore the only ones I have to confront. Why consider any others? Since that morning, I've been more at ease with what each day brings to me. There are tracks of the paths and roads I've walked that were less stony, almost entirely made up of flat, dried mud. that's softer on my feet. When these presented themselves, I would almost immediately think, that's better, that's more like it, this is what I need, and I would assume that this condition would now somehow continue. But inevitably, after 50 or more meters, there would be an unforeseen obstruction and the comfort would abruptly end, meaning I would continually have to negotiate difficult conditions arising with no warning. I would often cross to the other side if I thought there was a softer or wider surface to walk on, only to immediately cross back because those conditions changed also around the next bend. Increasingly, I've learned not to expect 50 meters of comfort to transmute into an entire day's easy walking, and to accept each change as simply another manifestation of the nature of the road. Consequently, I've begun to enjoy each brief moment of comfort, no matter how quickly it ends. Rather than worrying too much about a possible ending to such conditions, I now simply try to appreciate what's there. The irony of my previous approach was that I'd miss each lovely moment because my anxiety about its imminent ending spilled over into the easy breathing. All very simple, I know, but bear with me. Walking somehow seems to facilitate changes to the deeper layers of the self, seemingly so simple once understood, because they refer to the very basis of one's psycho-emotional being. And the nature of the road is not so different to my own, to my changeable, mutable self, to the lack of continuity I present to the world. So in a sense, the last line I wrote last night refers to how I can at times recognize my own self mirrored in the road, and how through such recognition, the road self can tell me much more about how I move in the world. In brief, the road is teacher, and my journey is simply a walk with the teacher, always most effective when it's one's own self that does the teaching. Today, because of the forecasted extreme heat, I attempted to begin to walk early. We were up before 7 and I started soon after 8, but the temperature rose more quickly than I had anticipated, and the air, combined with a grainy haze coming from a bushfire somewhere to the west, soon became unbreathable. A hot, dry wind was blowing directly into my face, and I was forced to use all the water I was carrying by the halfway mark. The roadside stones were unrelentingly sharp, and I slipped, tripped, and almost fell a number of times. Could I be tested more? Probably. But this was simply how the road lay before me today, and I chose to walk on. Today, like every day, this was our story together, the road and me. Walking to a degree as a cleansing of the mind, where what might be discarded usually as an over-simplistic thought can suddenly be seen in all its complexity, though as simple as ever. Simplicity can be very misleading when you really think that things are as simple as they seem. They never are. Until tomorrow's reading. Have a peaceful day.